Hello there, my friend. It is that time again, when the outside world begins to soften, and your thoughts are invited to wander somewhere gently useless. Tonight, we embark on a journey that serves no practical purpose whatsoever, and that's precisely what makes it perfect for now. Picture this. You are standing barefoot in a drafty stone chamber, a room you've never quite remembered entering, staring at a warped oval mirror that, curiously, seems to have noticed you first. Your reflection blinks before you do. I should know. I've watched it happen more times than I can count from my place in this cold castle wall. I do not blink. That privilege belongs to creatures like you. Of course, none of this will help you in your waking life. But here, in this slow stream of mildly interesting irrelevance, you're welcome to drift. So, just before we immerse ourselves fully in this delightfully unnecessary narrative, should you find a strange sort of comfort in these gently meandering tales? A kind of quiet joy in learning things you'll almost certainly forget by morning? Then know that your company here is quietly appreciated. And if these whispers from the past bring a smile, or perhaps a moment of peace, do consider sharing this quiet corner with a friend who might also enjoy such gentle uselessness. Or perhaps even follow along, so these old stones, or feathers or threads, know their tales are finding a welcome ear. And if you happen to be listening from a distant corner of the world, perhaps at a time when most are deep in dreams, or still chasing deadlines, do feel free to share where you are and what time it is. It's oddly reassuring to know where these harmless little reflections are drifting off to. Now, settle in, adjust your blanket, take a soft, slow breath, and let's begin. You awaken not with a jolt, but with the soft realization that something in the room feels watched. Not watching, mind you. That would imply something external. But watched, like a spoon sensing it's being judged for its curvature. And there, resting just across from the small straw bed you've somehow acquired, is the mirror. Oval, iron-framed, the kind only a minor noble might have possessed during the late 13th century, when the import of such glass from Venice cost more than the wages of 7 apothecaries and a small goat. You rub your eyes. The reflection blinks again. Now, perhaps you're thinking this is simply a trick of candlelight, or your own sleepy confusion. That would be fair. But from where I rest, built into this wall centuries before this chamber knew your breath, I've seen mirrors do far stranger things, like hum softly during thunderstorms, or show a reflection of a person before they entered the room. You try to stand. The stone floor groans. I apologize. That was me. As you cross the room, the mirror remains still, but not passive. Oh no. I once overheard a friar call this particular artifact a speculum animi, a mirror of the soul. He said it with the reverent fear usually reserved for relics, or particularly spicy eels. You tilt your head. So does it. You smile politely, perhaps nervously. And this is where things get curious. For in the mirror, your reflection doesn't smile. It squints. Just a little. As if evaluating your intentions. Now here's something I recall. In the court of Queen Isabella of France, there was once a mirror so large it required 6 servants to carry it, and 2 to whisper to it at night. Not out of superstition, mind you. No, they simply found it stopped rattling when softly spoken to. Some suspected the glass was haunted. Others, that it was just French. It is generally accepted that early medieval mirrors were not mirrors in the modern sense at all. They were often polished metal, bronze, obsidian, or silver, and reflected the viewer in smudged, silvery approximations. But this mirror, this one gleams with glass. Not quite modern, not quite ancient. Possibly not quite mirror. You raise a hand. Your reflection raises theirs. Slower than you. Lagging. Hesitating. Odd, isn't it? How you suddenly remember that tale the servant girl told last week. About her cousin. Or maybe it was her cousin's friend, who stared too long into a mirror during the lunar feast, and now believes she's inside it. Trapped. A rumor, surely. And yet, the sensation persists, that your reflection is not entirely yours. that it might remember things you do not. The mirror creaks in its hinge, not from your movement. You didn't touch it. Now, I don't mean to alarm. That's never my intention. But from the mortar and moss that make up my wide and silent watching self, I will gently offer this. Sometimes, in very old places, mirrors act as if they are owed something. A glance, a sigh, a memory, or, on rare and sleepless nights, a visitor. We ancient walls debate whether mirrors are passive, simply reflecting, or, somehow, choosing. My companion stone beside the window insists mirrors are like dogs, loyal, reactive, occasionally spiteful. I disagree. To me, they're more like wells. Still, until stirred. And yours, dear listener, has just rippled. The candle flickers again. You move closer. Your reflection no longer blinks. And in that stillness, you feel not fear, exactly, but that peculiar, nostalgic unease, like realizing your childhood toys might have had private lives when you weren't looking. You don't say anything. The mirror doesn't either. But it listens. I always do. You don't remember how long you've been sitting in front of it now. Time moves differently near certain things, especially things that stare back. And this mirror, well, it has a particular way of encouraging stillness. Like a cat on your lap that dares you to move, only with a bit more judgment and a much older accent. Your reflection remains precisely where you left it, which should be comforting. But I've seen comfort turn to suspicion with just the right lighting. You lean in, not too close. You've heard things. And I, the wall behind your shoulders, pocked with torch soot and centuries of whispers. Remember the days when people would fight to see themselves in such a thing. Not because they were vain, though many were, but because a mirror wasn't just a thing. It was a status. You see, for the better part of medieval life, only the very richest had the means or audacity to trap their faces in glass. Oh yes, long before you wandered into this room with your very modern eyebrows and vague sense of personal agency, there were kings and barons who would commission Venetian mirrors for entire fortunes. A mirror of this size, with glass this clear, would have once required weeks of craftsmanship, a dozen horses to transport, and at least one person to loudly declare, "Behold my face." And behold it they did, or tried to. Because in truth, the earliest medieval mirrors weren't really glass at all. Most were discs of polished bronze or obsidian, occasionally silver, shiny enough to catch a glimpse of yourself, but distorted enough to ruin your confidence. They warped faces, stretched noses, shortened chins. One noblewoman supposedly tried to sue her blacksmith after claiming his mirror made her look like her mother-in-law. A scandal. Naturally, even when glass mirrors became more common, by more common, I mean seen once per decade and guarded like relics. They were wildly inconsistent. One day you'd look youthful, the next positively haunted. Sometimes the mirror wasn't even yours. It belonged to the household. You had to borrow it. Can you imagine? You reach out, almost absent-mindedly, and touch the edge of the mirror's frame. Cold. Heavier than it looks. I note this because it's a curious thing, how objects that reflect seem to carry the weight of what they show. I've watched lords study their own eyes for signs of treason, watched queens lean in close, hunting for wrinkles, as if aging were a siege. And once, I saw a jester wink at himself every morning for 3 years. I miss that jester. But back to you. You press your finger against the glass. It doesn't leave a mark, no fog, no smudge, just the strange feeling that the mirror expected that gesture, and is quietly unimpressed. Here's a fact, gently nestled among the mossy folds of history. The oldest surviving European glass mirror dates to the 13th century and was found in the ruins of a manor near Nuremberg. It was cracked clean through, as if someone once tried to punch their reflection. Or perhaps their reflection punched first? Of course, we can't say for certain. We, the bricks and beams and splinters of old places, are not privy to the paperwork of human motivation. But we notice patterns, like how nobles often placed mirrors opposite doors, not to check their hair, but to guard the room. to reflect evil spirits before they could cross the threshold, as if reflection itself were armor. And perhaps it is. You glance over your shoulder. The door remains shut, but the mirror, still open. There's an odd little tradition from the southern provinces, where mirrors were once covered in black cloth whenever someone died in the house. The belief was that mirrors could trap souls, or, worse, release them. I remember one winter when every mirror in the castle was draped for 3 months, even though no one had officially died. Just rumors. But that's often enough. Even now, you feel a subtle awareness, a tug in the pit of your stomach, that perhaps, for just a moment, your reflection doesn't match your mood. That perhaps it's remembering something you aren't. You smile nervously. Your reflection smiles back with just a shade too much patience. What luxury it must have been, you think, to be among the few allowed to see oneself. And yet, perhaps it was a burden too. There's an old superstition that says mirrors don't reflect what's real, but what's expected, which would explain a great many portraits from the time, frankly. You lean back, rubbing your temples. The mirror doesn't blink. It only watches. And I, humble old wall that I am, offer you this final musing for the hour. Even we stones sometimes wonder, not whether mirrors lie, but whether they remember what they once showed. I imagine a noble's face lingering in the silver, trapped not out of malice, but simply because the mirror was taught to hold it, like a child repeating a story long after it stopped making sense. You yawn. That's good. The mirror, ever still, seems to soften, as if relieved. Perhaps tonight, you've earned the right to be seen. You wake again, not because of noise, but because of stillness. The kind of perfect quiet that makes you suspicious of your own heartbeat. The candle you left burning has long since given up, melted into a resigned puddle. Shadows stretch across the chamber like they've been waiting for your return. And the mirror? It's not where you left it. Oh, it hasn't moved, not exactly. But something about it has shifted. It leans ever so slightly now, as if listening, as if inviting. You don't get up. You don't need to. That ancient thing, a curved oval no wider than your arms, ringed in blackened iron and smelling faintly of smoke and rosemary, radiates the same energy as a sleeping dog that might wake at the sound of its name. And I, who have rested in this castle wall longer than memory, can tell you, not all mirrors are content with reflection alone. Some want more. Now, you might think the idea of a cursed mirror is pure superstition, a leftover tale to scare apprentices or flirtatious washerwomen. But I remember the mirror in the Eastern Chapel, the one that refused to show priests their faces, the one that cracked when the bishop tried to exorcise it using Latin and vinegar. Sometimes it's not the mirror that's cursed. Sometimes it's the glance, a look held too long, a wish whispered too close. You sit up. The mirror does not flicker, not even as the moonlight cuts across its surface. And yet, it's glowing faintly, not with light, but with attention. Your attention. That's all it ever needed. You may wonder how a curse settles into glass. I've overheard many theories. One monk swore it happened when someone stared into a mirror while speaking ill of their own reflection. Another said it required 7 deaths and a forgotten name. But my personal favorite, whispered by a weaver's daughter who had more dreams than sense, was this. A mirror becomes cursed when it finally realizes it will never be seen for itself, only through others. Now, that's a tragedy even I can feel in my mortar. You draw closer, perhaps against your better judgment, but curiosity, like ivy, rarely asks permission. And there, just there under the surface, you see it, a faint outline, a shimmer, a silhouette, not your own. You step back. The figure remains. Ah, that old trick. They say cursed mirrors carry echoes of their previous owners. Not ghosts, mind you. Not quite. More like emotional fingerprints, the smudge of a scream, the stain of a secret. Over time, these remnants can swirl together into what scholars once called specularis memoria, a mirror memory. Not that scholars ever agreed on it. Even the spiders in the rafters roll their eyes at that term. Too dramatic, they say. But then, they're notoriously pragmatic creatures, especially during rainstorms. Still, I've seen it. The kitchen mirror once flashed the image of a woman no one had seen in decades, not even in paintings. And she smiled. Not maliciously, not sadly, just knowingly. Tonight, you see something different. A hand, not yours, pressed against the other side of the glass. It doesn't move. It doesn't beckon. It waits. You swallow the lump forming in your throat. Try to convince yourself it's nothing. A trick of the silvering. A clouded pain. Maybe even fatigue. But deep down you know. This mirror has worn its curse like a badge for centuries. And like all long-lived things, it has learned patience. Here's a morsel of history, if you're still collecting them like breadcrumbs to sanity. In 1453, a noble in the north claimed his mirror whispered advice. At first harmless. Flattery, grooming suggestions, horse names. But it grew. Specific. And, eventually, political. When the mirror urged him to wage war on his cousin, it was declared cursed, shattered, and buried under the stables. They still say the horses won't sleep there. You're not a noble, but that might make you safer. The mirror prefers attention, not ambition. It feeds on soft gazes, not swords. You move away. Good. It hums again, faintly, like metal cooling after battle. The curse, if that's what it is, remains dormant. For now. And I, dear listener, I am simply the wall. Unmoving. Old. A collection of dust and secrets. I offer no answers. Only memory. But I will say this. Cursed things rarely consider themselves cursed. They see themselves as overlooked, misunderstood, misused. Just like people. Sleep now, if you can. The mirror is calm again. But it knows your face. And you, well, you've learned the quiet danger of being seen too clearly. The next evening settles over the castle like a velvet drape. Soft, inevitable, slightly musty. Somewhere, a bell tolls 6 times, or perhaps 7. Time has a way of overlapping in old places. You're here again, sitting across from the mirror, though now you've dragged a stool closer. Closer than last night. Closer than is strictly polite. That's all it takes, you know. Just a little more proximity. A little more time. Even the ivy outside knows this. I should know. It climbs across my exterior year after year, uninvited but devoted. You shift. The mirror does not. But you know it's aware of you, even if it pretends not to be. And perhaps you're beginning to understand why people stop showing up after sunset. Oh yes, you've heard the stories, the ones shared quietly over barley stew and bread that's more crust than loaf. That boy from the village, the one who whistled too much, vanished one evening while fetching kindling near the manor. A maid went to straighten the guest room and never came back. The tailor's niece, last seen brushing her hair in front of a dressing glass. Coincidences, perhaps. But then again, the only room these vanishings have in common is this one. This very room. With this very mirror. I don't offer conclusions. I am merely the wall. But you, dear listener, you notice things. Like how your reflection's eyes seem slightly off tonight. Not wrong exactly. Just delayed. Like an actor forgetting their line and recovering with an improvised shrug. You stand. The mirror leans, not physically, but perceptibly. It's absurd, really, that in an age of mud-drenched roads and plague-paranoid midwives, one of the most popular rumors involves mirrors that take people, as if reflection were a hungry act, as if the silver glass wanted company. But absurdity is no shield, especially not here. Here's something I overheard once, in whispers behind a tapestry, while a knight's squire confessed, "The mirror doesn't steal you. You agree to go." That's the trick. You recognize yourself in the glass, and then realize, too late, that it's not the version you wanted to return to. A scholar might call that poetic nonsense. But walls like me, we've watched enough departures not to argue. Let me offer a historical pebble for your pocket. In 1329, during the short-lived reign of Lady Hemlin of Westerby, it was recorded that her ancestral home ate 3 guests during the autumn equinox. That was the precise word used. 8. Some blamed the cursed wine. Others blamed a collapsed stairwell. But the servants whispered of the mirror in the west wing. A mirror gifted from a Venetian trader. A mirror never moved since. No one in the village walks past that wing now. Not even the ghosts. You step back from your mirror, feeling the sudden chill of decision. That's good. Mirrors, like cats and curses, respect boundaries, until they don't. You light a new candle. The flame catches, reluctant, but alive. Its glow flickers across the glass. The reflection ripples slightly. Just slightly. Like a pond disturbed by thought. You think of the others. The disappeared. Perhaps they're not gone. Perhaps they're just very, very quiet now. A part of you wants to ask the mirror a question. Something simple. Something like, "Are you empty?" But you don't. And the ancient stones beneath your feet, beneath your bed, beneath everything you call firm. I am grateful for that. Questions have a way of sticking. Mirrors are excellent at remembering questions. Not always the answers. Just the asking. You hear a knock. Not at the door. From inside the glass. Soft. Rhythmic. 1, 2. Pause. 1. You freeze. The mirror stays still. But something behind your reflection waits. There's a superstition, old, even by our standards, that if you ever see movement in a mirror that isn't yours, you must never reach toward it. Not because something might pull you in, but because, what if you are the one on the wrong side? You blink, and the image is gone, or perhaps it was never there. Either way, the glass resumes its perfect stillness. You're safe again, for now. And I, who have watched 100 faces fade from this room, wonder softly, not if you will vanish, but when. Because disappearance, you see, is rarely sudden. It's a process, a surrender, a glance held just a second too long, a heartbeat lost between reflections. Sleep gently tonight. Turn the mirror to the wall, if that helps. Many do, but know this. It doesn't matter which way the glass faces. The mirror remembers. The following morning is gray in that particular medieval way. Not stormy, just resigned. The air smells faintly of wet stone, boiled cabbage, and something you can only describe as old book panic. You've taken to avoiding direct eye contact with the mirror. A perfectly rational habit when you suspect a piece of furniture may, in fact, hold a minor grudge. But today it's not just you in the glass. Today the priest is here. Not a young one, mind you. This one looks like he was carved from sour bread and disappointment, with robes that rustle like guilt, and eyes that have long since decided joy is for heretics. He says he's here to bless the room. You say nothing. The mirror says even less. I, who have held the sound of these sacred mumblings in my joints for centuries, know the truth. He's not here for the room. He's here for the mirror. You step aside. The priest steps forward. The mirror doesn't step at all, but it feels closer now. He begins his incantation, low and rhythmic, in Latin tinged with local suspicion. He waves a censer. Smoke curls toward the ceiling and immediately begins trying to escape through the cracks in me. Wise smoke. He sprinkles holy water. Some of it hisses. No one reacts. But you hear it, and I felt it. Right there, in the fine seam between the glass and the frame. A flinch. Now, here's a curious historical wrinkle to smooth between your palms as you drift. In certain parts of medieval Europe, mirrors were forbidden in the same room as exorcisms. Why? Because mirrors don't always show just the possessed. Sometimes they show what's waiting to possess them. One exorcist, Father Arnaud, 14th century Burgundy, insisted that mirrors act as sympathetic anchors, which is a very scholarly way of saying they're like invitations written in silver. This particular priest seems to believe the same. He chants louder now, directing his words straight at the mirror. His eyes close. The incense thickens. And then he stops. You wait. He opens one eye, then both. Looks at the mirror, leans forward, and whispers, "I saw it blink. Not you. Not your reflection. It." He doesn't finish the ritual. just slowly backs away, muttering something about needing stronger oil and perhaps fewer windows. I don't judge him. Even I, with my layers of stone and centuries of echo, have never been able to decide if mirrors dislike blessings, or if they simply store them like rain in a barrel. For later. The priest leaves in a hurry. His boot squeaks on the flagstone. That was me again. Sorry. You and the mirror are alone once more. You approach it, slowly, cautiously. And you swear, the glass is warmer now, not hot, just aware. As if the blessing stirred something slumbering in its depths. Not awakened it, not yet, but nudged it. Like a name spoken in sleep. A fly buzzes near the mirror. It lands. It doesn't move again. That happens, sometimes. There's a lesser-known belief, buried deep in the notes of a 12th century manuscript called Specularum Obscura, that mirrors could house trapped spirits unfit for heaven or hell, souls whose sins were too poetic to be judged efficiently. It was never canonized, of course. But those are the sorts of beliefs that hang around anyway, like smoke, or unresolved apologies. You wonder as you stare into the mirror whether the priest saw a demon or just a very tired echo. It's hard to tell, isn't it? You lift your hand toward the glass, perhaps without meaning to, just to check, just to be sure. Your reflection lifts theirs too, in perfect time, this time, but it holds your gaze a moment longer than necessary, and then it smiles. That's new. You drop your hand. You step away. Good. The mirror remains still, as do I. Let me offer you this final comfort as your eyes begin to grow heavy. In all my centuries, only 2 priests ever attempted to exorcise a mirror. One ran screaming from the room. The other stayed. And now, he lives in the reflection. Third pane from the left, behind the coat rack, still waiting for someone to finish the prayer. Sleep, now. There are no blessings tonight, only silence. The day has been oddly cheerful. The kind of day where the bread actually rises, the hens stay in their yard, and the well doesn't cough up anything that twitches. Sunlight filters through the arrow slits, and for a fleeting moment, it feels like the mirror is just furniture. You breathe easier. Foolishly. It is late afternoon now, and you're brushing your hair. A simple act, a comfort. The way the bristles catch just slightly before sliding through. You hum something, a tune from nowhere in particular. The mirror watches. It doesn't reflect perfectly anymore. There's a smear across the left side of the glass. You didn't put it there. You've tried to clean it. The smear remains. Odd how some marks only exist in reflections. And then you do something that no one has done in this room for a long, long time. You offer the mirror a compliment. Not aloud, not formally. Just a quiet thought. You know, you're really quite elegant when the light hits you like that. The reflection stills. Your reflection stills, and then, slowly, your reflection raises one eyebrow. Yours does not. You blink. It rolls its eyes. At you. Now, as a wall, and I say this with the humility of centuries, I've seen all manner of demons, spirits, shades, and aristocrats with indigestion. But this is new. The mirror is offended. It doesn't want flattery. It wants honesty. And maybe that, dear listener, is the real curse. Not monsters or vanishings, but a mirror that knows when you're being insincere. You frown, softly. You try again. You're very commanding. The mirror sulks. Perhaps it's time for a story. Many years ago, before you, before your mirror, before this very wall was mortared into place, a young noblewoman named Eleanor had a hand mirror carved from obsidian. It was said to have been cooled in holy water and polished with lamb's breath. No one really knows what that last part means. She used it every day, to admire herself, to compose poetry, to preen. And one day she said, "Mirror, tell me what you love most about me." The mirror cracked down the middle. That's the thing with objects that have seen too much. They tend to tire of praise, especially when it's not earned. In some parts of medieval Poland, it was customary to scold mirrors. To maintain their clarity, one had to remind the mirror who was in charge. A quick insult, a mild threat, perhaps a splash of vinegar. Never let a mirror get above itself, they said. Ridiculous, yes? And yet, your mirror seems to have taken that tradition to heart. You step away. The mirror's reflection shrugs. That's when you hear it. A sound, faint and dry, like parchment crumpling in reverse. Whispering, not Latin, not any language you know. More like intent, trying on syllables. You freeze. The reflection smiles, not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly. Some say demons speak in riddles. Others say they speak in compliments you didn't earn. Either way, the mirror does not want your flattery. It wants your truth. And if you don't give it, it might take the version of you that would. You light a candle. The flame trembles. You blow it out. The darkness holds its breath. Let me share one final, undercooked fact. In the lower halls of Castle Grotenberg, there lies a mirror behind 6 iron doors. It's covered in cloth, sealed in wax, and guarded by silence. Why? Because it's said to show not your face, but your most believable lie. No one has dared look into it for 200 years. I suspect your mirror may be a distant cousin. So tonight, if you must speak to the glass, be honest. Be plain. Be boring. Mirrors grow wary of flattery. Demons despise it. And I, who've cradled both, assure you, sincerity is safer. The morning begins with the smell of ink. Not fresh ink, no. This is the dry, musty kind. Old sermons and older regrets, curling in the corners of brittle parchment. Somewhere down the corridor, a monk is recopying the Book of Hours for the 3rd time, even though no one asked him to. And as for you, you're in the scriptorium. An odd choice, considering you're not particularly fond of Latin, dim candlelight, or rooms that seem perpetually 10 minutes after confession. But you're not here for the texts. You're here for the cupboard. The one that's chained, bolted, blessed, and locked with 3 separate keys. You ask the monk about it. He glances once, then says plainly, "It's full of mirrors." You blink. "Old ones," he adds. "We locked them away after incidents." You wait for elaboration. He returns to his quill. Ah, the monastic tradition of selective honesty. You linger by the cupboard longer than you probably should. There's a faint hum coming from behind the wood. Low, steady, like bees in prayer. And a stone wall, long-suffering and quietly flaking with lichen near the scriptorium ceiling. Remember why those mirrors were taken. You see, there was a time, not terribly long ago, when the monks believed mirrors could reflect not just light, but sin. This wasn't metaphor. They believed that if someone unworthy looked too long into a mirror, it would trap their spiritual blemishes like soot on glass. A sort of divine photographic plate. The monks claimed they could see pride, envy, lust, all clinging to the surface like smudges. So, they hid them. Because monks, for all their chanting and fasting and fondness for cold floors, are still human. And humans do not like to be reminded of their sins in high definition. One night, Brother Josaphat, a tall man with sharp elbows and a squint you could hang a lantern on, stared too long into one of the mirrors. Not out of vanity, but curiosity. The next morning, he was blind. When they asked him what happened, he said only, "It saw too much of me." The abbot sealed the cupboard the next day. They tried exorcising it, of course. We've covered how well that usually goes. Spoiler, poorly. They tried breaking the mirrors, but the shards still reflected. Worse, in fact, what one novice claimed he saw his own face age in the glass as he turned away. Eventually, the mirrors were deemed too theological to destroy and too practical to display. So into the cupboard they went. And now they hum. Softly. Always. You ask the monk if you may look inside. He says no. But not because he fears for you. He fears for them. The mirrors. Because once they're seen, they remember. That's the danger. You leave the scriptorium, but the scent of dried ink follows you like a guilty echo. And when you pass by the hallway mirror, the small one in the brass frame, you pause. Your reflection isn't quite in sync. You raise your hand. It raises its own. You nod. It waits. A half-second late, as though it had to think about it. And I, who've witnessed 10,000 candles extinguished, either by wind or worry, offer you this reflection. When monks start hiding things, it's rarely for your safety. It's to keep the thing inside from learning too much. Mirrors, once aware, are remarkably fast students. Let me gift you a final tidbit. In one forgotten abbey, there is said to be a mirror so old, it reflects only previous viewers, not the current one. So if you look into it, you see who came before. Not who you are, just who was. And sometimes that's the scariest thing of all. Sleep now. Don't worry. Your reflection has stopped watching. For tonight, it's only listening. There's something off about the light today. It filters through the narrow windows in slow, uncertain shafts. Hesitant, like a guest unsure whether they're welcome or merely tolerated. Dust dances in it, aimless and unbothered, as if centuries haven't passed through this corridor with stern faces and muddy boots. And then you notice it. The hallway mirror, the one with the brass frame, mounted at an odd height, where only children and hunchbacks can see their full faces, has gone. Blank. Not broken. Not smudged. Just blank. You stop. Peer into it. Nothing peers back. And I, your ever-present observer of grout and gloom, must admit, this is rare. Mirrors, for all their theatrical leanings and secretive murmurs, do not forget to reflect. That is their only job, their singular purpose. To fail at it is either a choice or a rebellion. You tilt your head. The mirror does not respond. It doesn't shimmer, doesn't flicker. It doesn't even hold that strange glassy depth. The feeling that somewhere beyond the silver is a deeper version of you, waiting. It simply doesn't see you. This isn't silence. This is absence. You wave a hand. Nothing. You lean close enough that your breath fogs the glass, though the fog clings only briefly before sliding off, like a child who's changed their mind about a hug. Now, some may suggest this is a sign of wear, a flaw in the backing, moisture damage, simple medieval craftsmanship gone wrong. But you and I, we know better. We know what happens when a mirror begins to forget. It's not just your face it loses. It's your possibility. See, once upon a dim-lit winter, in a manor whose name is now moss, a woman sat each night before a mirror that had begun to lag. At first, her reflection was only slightly off, delayed. Then, it started making different choices, turning its head when she did not, sighing when she held her breath, and then, one evening, it was gone altogether. She could see the room, the fire behind her, even the bed, but never herself. That was the night she stopped answering her own name. Some believe mirrors reflect more than light. They echo the self. And when they forget that self, when the reflection fades, the person fades with it. You shake your head, trying to clear the fog of speculation. But I, a patch of stone just above the doorframe, where moss and memory meet, will gently point out that your shoes have not appeared in the glass either. You are, in the mirror's opinion, no longer present. It's not angry. It's not hiding. It's simply uninterested. That's the most unsettling part. Because when a mirror stops reflecting you, it's not punishing you. It's moving on. Now, here's an obscurity, collected like lint in the folds of time. In the archives of the Duchy of Velmore, a monk described a mirror that reflected all persons faithfully, until the owner's son insulted it. No specifics given, just an offense grave enough that the glass withheld all future images, preferring to remain blank, rather than show disrespectful lineage. Is it truth, or scribe's embellishment? Either way, the mirror in the hallway seems to share that temperament. You back away. The blankness remains. That's wise. Mirrors don't often return what they take, especially attention. But as you turn to leave, something strange happens. The candlelight flickers behind you, and just for a moment, in the edge of your vision, you see your reflection again. Not as you are now, as you were yesterday, You freeze. Glance back. Gone. The mirror is blank once more. Just a panel of stubborn glass. I do not pretend to understand this, friend. I am, after all, only a wall. But I have seen how mirrors behave when forgotten, and how they retaliate when ignored. Some whisper, some twist, some disengage. Let me leave you with this thought. A mirror that forgets you is not broken. It is choosing, and that choice is never random. So tonight, as you settle into your bed, turn your mirror to the wall if you wish, though I cannot promise that helps. Instead, speak your name softly. Remind the glass you are still here, just in case it ever forgets again. It is the hour just after midnight, when even the candle wax seems too tired to drip. The chamber is still, save for the occasional creak of old wood shifting in the walls, a sound I know well. It's the way beams sigh when they remember they're holding centuries aloft. You are sitting upright, not out of choice, out of invitation, because the mirror called you. Not with sound, not quite, but you awoke with the absolute certainty that it had something to say. And here you are, in your nightclothes, feet chilled from the stone floor, staring at glass that waits like a page halfway turned. You breathe in. The mirror doesn't fog. You whisper, "Hello." The mirror replies, "Ego sum qui fui. Fui qui eris." The words are not loud. They don't echo. They just are. As if the mirror didn't speak them, but recalled them. You freeze. You don't know Latin. Not properly. Not more than a church phrase here or there. The kind muttered over bread, wine, and vague misgivings. But I do. I've absorbed the language through osmosis, the steady drip of prayers, curses, and poorly translated recipes. And I assure you, that phrase means something close to, "I am what I was. I was what you will be." You don't respond. What could you possibly say to that? The mirror remains still. Then it speaks again. Not aloud, not with voice, with rhythm, with presence, like a memory knocking on your door. Memini umbras, tuae sunt. I remember the shadows. They are yours. Now you might assume this is madness, that sleep has tricked you, that perhaps the stew at dinner had too much time and not enough clarity. But I, a lichen-streaked stone lintel, who has held up doors and dread alike, have heard mirrors mutter before. Never in rhyme, never in poetry, but always in Latin. You lean forward, and the mirror finally shows you. Not your face, not your room, but a room like this one, older, sharper, cracked by time. A young man, not you, but close enough to be a cousin in spirit, is standing in front of it, reciting verses. His voice shakes. He doesn't seem to understand the words, only that he must say them. A ritual. Behind him, the mirror's reflection begins to speak. Not in sync, not even politely, just louder, correcting him. He turns. There's no one there. You blink, and you're alone again. The mirror is still, but in the edges of the frame, the impression of words remains. Not carved, not written, just suggested. You whisper the first phrase back to it. Ego sum qui fui. The mirror pulses, a soundless thrum. Let me offer a small thread from the tangled robe of history. In the 14th century, a scholar named Aurelius Venn wrote of specula loquentia, speaking mirrors. He claimed they could only be activated during the hour of vigil, and only in the presence of someone who had both forgotten and been forgotten. A rather cruel qualification, if you ask me. But then, mirrors have always had a flair for the dramatic. Your candle flickers. The flame bends toward the mirror. Not from draft, but curiosity. You extinguish it. The dark settles around you, like a secret. The mirror's surface shimmers, as if it's about to speak once more. But instead, a final phrase appears, fogged into the glass without breath. Noli me tangere. Do not touch me. And oh, how wise that is. Because even I, a humble cornerstone and occasional echo chamber, know that when mirrors start issuing warnings in dead languages, it's best to listen. You step back. The mirror sighs. Or perhaps you imagine that. Sleep, is a soft blanket draped over your shoulders now, heavier with every moment. I will keep watch, as I always have. The stones remember. And the mirror? It's quiet again. But Latin, you see, is never spoken by accident. There is a stillness to certain mornings in a medieval keep. A hush not born of reverence or rest, but of something altogether different. Anticipation. Today is such a morning. The kind that makes even the dust hang nervously in the air. The kind that sends birds to roost early and makes door hinges creak in minor keys. And at the center of it, all is her. The toddler. A waddling storm in woolen socks and questionable decision-making. She appears in the corridor like a comet, fast, sticky, and surrounded by a faint, inexplicable buzz. A smear of plum jam coats one cheek. A crust of something once edible clings to her sleeve. She carries in her left hand a spoon, possibly a weapon, possibly a relic. Difficult to tell. She is not afraid, and neither is the mirror. But I, a seasoned wall that has withstood everything from drunken nights to unseasoned poetry, I am terrified. For you see, while scholars and scribes debate the metaphysical implications of mirror spirits, reflections, and cursed Latin murmurings, no one prepares the mirror for this. A child with no concept of boundaries, no respect for sacred artifacts, and, most importantly, no understanding that jam should not be applied to reflective surfaces. She toddles toward the hallway mirror, the smaller one, waist height, an innocent bystander in centuries of arcane drama. The mirror, to its credit, braces itself, if such things are possible. She stops. She stares. She grins. And then, she smacks it. Right on the glass. Jam and all. A wet, glorious splat. The kind of sound that makes spirits retreat, and tapestries shudder in sympathy. Now, a lesser mirror might retaliate. This one simply withholds. It ceases to reflect. Instantly. It becomes a blank square, as if turning away in protest. But the child doesn't notice. She begins babbling, a blend of syllables and nonsense, laced with intent. Her fingers smear loops and spirals across the jam-slicked surface. She creates a kind of primitive sigil. If I had lips, I'd be biting them. You arrive moments later. Too late, of course. The damage is done. You freeze. The mirror's surface is a battlefield of fingerprints, sugary streaks, and one very confident spoon mark. The child looks up at you and proudly announces, "I fixed it." The mirror hums. Just once. Low and long, like a monk trying not to shout. You kneel and gently guide the child away. She leaves happily, trailing crumbs and destiny behind her. And now, it's just you in the mirror. It is not pleased. You reach for a cloth, murmuring apologies on behalf of toddlers, jam, and the entire concept of sticky food. You clean. Slowly. Carefully. Underneath the residue, you find your reflection again. But it looks tired. Faint bags under the eyes. A small frown you weren't aware of. It's you. But after babysitting, and I, an old section of stone that once bore the marks of a sword fight, and now bears only the gentle weight of your presence, I offer you this consolation. The mirror will forgive. Eventually. Because here's a curious historical note. In 1387, a child in the Duchy of Fenmir reportedly scribbled a series of symbols onto a sacred mirror, using mashed gooseberries. The mirror ceased functioning for a full week. When it returned, it reflected the boy as an adult for several days. Scholars debated whether it was prophecy or punishment. One thing was agreed upon. Never allow jam in the ritual chamber. You finish cleaning. The mirror regains its clarity. It reflects again, albeit hesitantly, like someone re-entering a room after hearing their name whispered. You nod. It does not nod back. But it doesn't turn blank either. Progress. Tonight, as you lie in bed, and the child mumbles happily in the next room, dreaming perhaps of smiting demons with a wooden spoon, the mirror rests. It has survived a trial. Not one of spirits, not of darkness, but of jelly-based chaos. Sleep easy. The mirror has faced its greatest foe, and, in its way, endured. There are many stories buried within these walls. Some whispered, some wept. Some scratched gently into the plaster with the edge of a forgotten ring. But this one, oh, this one, is recited only when the candle burns low and the wine tastes just a little like regret. This is the story of Baron Aldrich of Vrosmere, who fell in love with his own reflection. Not metaphorically, not poetically, literally. You are wandering the north wing when you first hear the name again, tucked into a conversation between two passing stewards. They say it in hushed tones, like invoking the title of a ghost who's still mulling over whether to haunt or simply judge. You follow the corridor, past the window that never closes properly, past the tapestry that's always just a bit crooked, until you reach the door. Tall, mahogany, sealed shut with a rusted latch and a single daisy pressed beneath it, long since dried. I know this door well. Behind it lies the Baron's chamber. You don't enter. Not yet. You sit outside, curious. As the wall, I remember it all. And so I will tell you. Baron Aldrich was a man of war and wit. He had more scars than teeth, and more books than guests. But one thing he lacked, or believed he lacked, was a companion who understood him. And so, when a Venetian artisan gifted him a mirror rumored to reveal only that which the heart desires most, Aldrich hung it in his private study. At first, he used it like any other noble might, for grooming, for vanity, for checking whether his scowl was sufficiently intimidating. But one evening, as thunder rolled across the horizon and the candles dimmed with indecision, the mirror showed him something new. Himself, yes, but different, gentler, softer, listening. Aldrich, the man, did not smile, but the reflection did, and that was all it took. From that night onward, he began to speak to it. At first casual, then curious, then confessional. The servants noticed the change. He began eating meals in front of the mirror, holding both sides of the conversation. They heard him laugh. They heard him whisper. And eventually, terrifyingly, they heard him propose. Now, I understand your skepticism. I too, as a wall, have groaned in disbelief more times than I can count. But I assure you, this is no exaggeration. The mirror was taken to the chapel. Witnesses were present. He knelt. He said vows. And in that flickering surface, he claimed, his reflection said yes. Of course, there was no legal recognition. The priest refused. The Baron insisted the priest need not officiate what the heart already knows. 2 weeks later, Aldrich dismissed his entire court. He remained in the manor alone, save for the mirror. When the cook returned a month later with supplies, she found the Baron's bed untouched, his boots still muddy by the door, and, in the mirror, no reflection, just the room, empty. They never found his body. But every so often, when the wind sighs just so, and the moonlight strikes the glass at a mournful angle, the mirror flickers, and shows two chairs, side by side, occupied. One figure wears a familiar ring. Now, you might think this a cautionary tale, a lesson in vanity, or isolation, or the perils of emotionally over-invested furniture. But I offer another possibility. What if he wasn't mad? What if the mirror saw something truer than the world could offer? We do not question when monks fall in love with silence, or sailors with the sea. Why not a man with the only part of himself that truly listened? Let me leave you with this strange archival footnote. A letter found in the Baron's study, unsigned, but clearly his hand, read, "To love one's reflection is not to love oneself. It is to love the version of you that has already forgiven everything." The mirror from his study is still kept in a locked room. Occasionally, people say they hear laughter. 2 voices, sometimes 3. Tonight, as you pass your own mirror, perhaps on your way to sleep, pause for a moment, smile, and see if it smiles differently. You wake with dirt under your fingernails. That's the first sign that today is not a normal day. The second sign is the spade leaning against your chamber door. No note, no footprints. Just a faint trail of mossy soil leading from the corridor toward the east garden, the part no one tends anymore, where the rosemary grows too tall and even the weeds seem embarrassed by their own audacity. You follow the trail, because of course you do. And I, a stone embedded near the archway, watching this garden fade and flourish in alternating cycles of neglect. I have seen this before. The old ritual, the burying. You reach the rosemary bed. The soil is soft here, as if it's been waiting. You dig, not urgently, not anxiously, just obediently. The way one might brush their teeth or say a polite prayer in a language they don't understand. And there it is, a mirror, small, round, the kind a noblewoman might have once kept on a ribbon at her waist. The glass is cracked, but intact. The handle is tarnished silver, etched with a symbol you don't recognize, a spiral within a circle within a hand. It pulses faintly in the light. Or perhaps that's just your breathing. You do not look into it. Wise. Because the thing about mirrors is, once they see you, they never unsee you. And so you do the only sensible thing. You dig a second hole. Carefully, respectfully, because there is a proper way to bury a mirror. You must place it face down, never face up. Otherwise it might still catch the stars. And the stars, I assure you, do not need encouragement from old magic. You must bury it with herbs, rosemary, lavender, mint, anything that remembers what it's like to grow toward the light. You must whisper a false name as you cover it. Something the mirror can hold on to that is not yours. A decoy, a gift. And finally, you must leave a pebble atop the soil. Not for weight, for memory. Pebbles remember better than people. You finish, you stand, you breathe, and the garden exhales with you. It's done. But not everyone knows why this is done. Let me share what I've absorbed. In regions where mirror curses were considered not demonic, but emotional, wounds rather than weapons, burying was seen as an act of mercy, not to banish, to comfort, to say, "You've seen too much. Rest now." One mirror was buried in this very garden 2 centuries ago. A girl named Lisbeth, no older than 16, caught her own reflection smiling while she cried. Not a crack in the glass, not a trick of the light, just a reflection that got tired of empathy. They say the mirror wept for a week after she covered it in dirt and lavender. Some say it still does, when the rain is warm enough. You look down at the small mound you've made. You feel no fear, only understanding. You have given the mirror a place to sleep. That is rare and kind. Mirrors are not meant to be buried, but sometimes they ask to be. Not with words, with dreams, with morning fingernails coated in soil and a spade leaning by the door. You return to your chamber. The spade is gone. And the hallway mirror reflects you again. Softly this time. Gently, without judgment, without lag. It has noticed your service. And I, the oldest stone in this eastern corridor, cracked but constant, I notice it too. Let me offer this final petal of knowledge. In a tiny village near the cliffs of Montreuil, they place a single broken mirror shard in the coffin of those who die unexpectedly. Not to trap the soul, but to ensure that someone, somewhere, is still looking for them. A reflection, you see, is a form of remembrance. Tonight, as you close your eyes, let the memory of dirt and herbs lull you. You have buried something that once saw too much, and in doing so, you've made peace with a piece of yourself. Tonight, the moon is smug, a polished coin tossed carelessly onto the velvet tablecloth of the sky, glowing far too brightly for your comfort. It spills silver through the tower window, landing in an accusatory rectangle right across your pillow. You shift. The mirror in the corner, the tall one, draped in a linen cloth tied at the top like a headscarf, does not shift. It simply waits. And you begin to wonder, why don't vampires have reflections? It's a popular question, one that echoes through folklore and candlelit storytelling sessions like a particularly dramatic sneeze. You've heard all the reasons, haven't you? They cast no shadow. They have no soul. The mirror rejects the cursed. All very dramatic, all very tidy. But allow me, a wall who has cradled both priestly hymns and nighttime heresies, to offer a different possibility. What if mirrors simply found vampires boring? Think about it. Vampires are obsessed with themselves. They dress with precision. They plan their entrances. They monologue. But mirrors? Mirrors have seen it all. Kings crying over pimples. Queens practicing smiles they'll never use. Wizards checking their angles before summoning thunder. A vampire walks in, expecting awe. The mirror simply shrugs and refuses to show them. Petty? Certainly. But mirrors invented petty. Now here's something from the dusty folds of the Abbey of Nordhollen, circa 1462. A scholar named Master Henricus recorded that during a vampire scare, villagers began smashing mirrors, not to avoid seeing vampires, but because one mirror had reportedly reflected one too many people. They believed mirrors were adding reflections, not subtracting. Henricus himself suspected the mirror was simply exhausted from so much fear. He then added cryptically, "Glass remembers what blood tries to forget," which, if you think about it, is either poetry or a cry for help. The truth is, no one has ever proven that vampires lack reflections. But many mirrors have refused to participate in the investigation. You rise from bed, curiosity outweighing caution. You cross the room. You untie the cloth. The mirror is awake. You know that look. It's not surprise. It's recognition. You gaze into it. And there you are. Pale from sleep. Barefoot. Unsure. And your reflection? Just the same. But you pause. Wasn't the legend supposed to be that mirrors reveal the monstrous truth? That they strip away illusions? So you look closer, harder. And yes, there it is. The flicker behind your eyes. Not evil. Not ancient hunger. Just exhaustion. From being watched. From watching yourself. From wondering what it is that mirrors really see when they look at you. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real reason vampires avoid mirrors. Not because they see nothing, but because they see too much. A lifetime of mistakes, of glamour, of pretending. A mirror doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't reassure. It reflects. And that's sometimes worse. Now, if I may be so bold, allow me to share one more tidbit. There is a folktale in the northern provinces, more whispered than written, that says vampires can see themselves in mirrors, but only in ones they used before they died. Which is perhaps why so many old mirrors are kept hidden in churches, and why some mirrors hum at night, very softly, when no one's there to see. So, tonight, as you return to bed and pull the blanket over your chest with theatrical caution, remember this: there are no vampires in your mirror. Not because they aren't real, but because the mirror isn't interested. It already has you. There is something strange about today. Not ominous, not heavy, just aware. Like the room has remembered something and is politely waiting for you to do the same. The mirror knows, of course. It always knows. It has become quiet lately, not dormant, just still. A reflective kind of still. The kind usually reserved for empty cathedrals and elderly librarians. You notice it immediately when you walk in. The mirror's surface is polished, clearer than you remember, as if someone or something has been tending to it in your absence. You stare into it, and it stares back, but not as it used to. This time, it looks nostalgic. Not for you, for a version of you that no longer exists. Your reflection seems younger somehow. Not in age, in posture, in possibility. It's standing the way you used to stand before disappointment taught your shoulders to curve. And you realize, the mirror isn't showing you your present self. It's remembering. You lean in, cautiously. Your reflection does not move. It stays exactly where it is, frozen in a moment you no longer inhabit. There's a term I've heard once, long ago, whispered by a wandering monk too tired to filter metaphor from madness. Reflexio saturata, a mirror that becomes full. Not of dust, not of magic, of memory. They said that if a mirror watches someone long enough, it begins to catalog not just the image, but the emotions behind it. A little fear here, a little longing there. Regret stains deeper than oil. Joy smudges lightly at the edges. Shame clings like mist. Eventually, the mirror forgets how to be neutral, and instead begins to replay. You wave a hand. Your reflection stays still. It smiles. You do not. I, a beam above your head, half rotted, but wiser than I appear, have seen it before. A mirror that reflects not what is now, but what was once most felt. That's the danger with memory, you see. It clings harder than truth. It distorts less obviously than lies. It makes a portrait out of moments you thought you'd survived. The mirror does not intend cruelty. It simply remembers too well. You step back. It blinks. And you understand. This mirror remembers everything. The time you rehearsed an apology, but never gave it. The time you smiled before betrayal. The night you whispered, "I'm fine," and didn't believe it. They're all in there, pressed into silver, like flowers in a book you can't bring yourself to open. Here's a thought from the archives of Gernot Holstadt, a minor historian with a major obsession. He once documented a mirror in the bedchamber of a dowager countess. It hadn't reflected her for over 10 years. Instead, it replayed her youth each morning. She died, convinced she was still 16. The mirror, they say, still shows her dancing. Sometimes in shadow, sometimes in light. You exhale. Your reflection exhales after. You turn your back to the mirror. Something you've never done before. It doesn't stop reflecting, but it slows. You leave the room, not because you're afraid, but because you realize the mirror has a better memory of you than you do. And that's no small burden. Sleep now. Tonight's dreams will be quieter, not because the mirror forgets, but because you are learning to remember gently. And that's enough. You've been meaning to visit the tower for days now. Not the main tower. Not the one with the bells and the ghosts who only groan during weddings. No, the northwest tower. The narrow one. The one with no staircase anymore. Just a ladder made of questionable decisions and splinters. But today, something calls you upward. A pull. Not of gravity, but of memory. You climb slowly. The wood creaks. The dust sighs, and the wall lining this forgotten vertical corridor. Try not to drop any more pebbles than necessary. You've come this far. You deserve some dignity. The room at the top is small, circular, and smells like time left unventilated. The kind of room that was once useful, perhaps for star charts or secret crying, and then simply wasn't. In the center of the room stands a mirror. Tall, quiet, covered, but not dusty. Someone, or something, has been keeping it clean. You approach, not out of habit, but out of that strange medieval mix of curiosity and respectful dread. The kind one feels around closed doors, ancient books, and noblemen trying to explain their latest tax idea. You do not uncover it, not yet. Instead, you sit beside it and listen, because that's the thing no one tells you. Mirrors hum, not all the time, not aloud. But if you're still, very still, they remember out loud. This one? It's humming in halves. Long, quiet pulses. Two parts of something unfinished. It wants company, but not yours. Not exactly. It's waiting. And from my vantage point, stone nestled beneath the window arch, half chipped by centuries of bird feet and muttered oaths. I know what it's waiting for. Someone who's already been here. You reach forward, fingertips on fabric. The moment is heavy, not foreboding, reverent, like you're touching the curtain of a stage you forgot you were meant to perform on. You pull it back. The mirror wakes. But it doesn't show you. It shows her. You don't know her, but your bones remember her. She stands as you do, tilts her head just as you do, wears the same ring. But she is not you, and she is looking through you. She sees something beyond, something you cannot. And then, slowly, she reaches out. A hand raised, a mirror's invitation. You hesitate, not from fear, but from respect. You raise your hand too, and just before they touch, she smiles and vanishes, gone like a word forgotten in a dream. And you are left with your reflection again, alone, but not lonely. The mirror is still, quiet, satisfied. Whatever it was waiting for, it's seen it now. And the tired stones wrapped around this forgotten turret, exhale with you. Not in relief, in release. Let me leave you with one last fragment of foolish history. In a ledger from the ruins of Castrillon, a marginal note reads, "The tower mirror waits until it is seen, not by the eyes, by the self." No one ever clarified what that meant. Maybe you just did. You stand. Cover the mirror once more, not to hide it, to honor it. Some mirrors don't want to reflect. They want to hold. A moment, a person, a truth too shy for sunlight. As you descend the ladder, the air feels lighter. You do too. You will sleep well tonight. The mirror is at peace, and so are you. And so, the story drifts to its end. Not with a bang, nor a scream, but with a sigh soft enough to lull even the most stubborn thoughts to sleep. The mirrors in these tales, absurd, uncanny, tender in their own quiet malice, have spoken. Not loudly, but clearly. In gestures, in echoes, in glimpses of a self only the silver knows. You've wandered through forgotten abbeys and cursed chambers, across latticed gardens and up creaking ladders. Not to find answers, but to remember questions you didn't know you'd misplaced. And I, your companion in quiet absurdity, your loyal lintel, or long-forgotten gargoyle or stone that once listened to lovers' kiss, and now simply listens. I thank you. Thank you for bringing your breath and your curiosity into this dusty corner of uselessness. May it have soothed some small tremor in your day. Now, roll over. Let the weight in your limbs gather. The world outside the glass will wait. And if your mirror remembers a little too much, smile at it. Not because it deserves it, but because you do. Sleep gently. Sleep uselessly. Sleep well. Sweet dreams.